When you're nearing 50 and realizing that the life you built might not have turned out exactly as you imagined, you start grasping for something, anything, that makes you feel alive again. That's how my best mate, Paul, and I found ourselves lost in the depths of the Scottish Highlands, just us, the trees, and the open sky, out there to escape the stresses of family, work, and all the little things that weigh you down as you get older. We'd been out there for 3 days, miles from the nearest person, setting up camp wherever we pleased, cooking our meals on an open fire and falling asleep under the stars. There was something almost therapeutic about it. Even when the paths we took were grueling and the nights unbearably cold, it was the best escape I'd had in years. On the fourth night, we were set up in a clearing, the tent pitched a few meters from the fire. The sky was pitch black except for a scattering of stars, and all we could hear were distant animal noises and the crackling of our fire. We were sitting there nursing a flask of whiskey when we heard a howl, low and resonant, deeper than anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't a wolf. I can't even compare it to any animal I know. This howl was so powerful that it seemed to shake the ground beneath us. Paul laughed it off, cracking a fart joke to settle our nerves, but I could tell he was rattled too. Then we heard sticks breaking, snapping loudly, as if something heavy was charging through the trees, heading straight for us. By then, the whiskey wasn't making anything feel better. My heart was racing, but we stayed put, frozen by some stupid, stubborn sense that it'd be safer to stay still. Before we knew it, something massive burst from the trees and leapt right over the fire, landing between us and the tent. I can barely describe what it looked like because it all happened so fast, but it was huge, towering over us, its matted hair catching the firelight. It wasn't a bear or a man or any animal I'd ever seen. Paul was screaming, but I could barely move. This thing, this creature was thrashing, swinging its arms and smashing everything in its path. The tent shredded under its claws and the fire logs went flying, setting anything dry ablaze in seconds. It roared, so loud that I felt it vibrate in my chest, but it wasn't done. I was backing away slowly, horrified and not knowing what else to do. Then it turned and grabbed Paul by the leg. His face went pale and he screamed louder than I'd ever heard him scream before. It dragged him, yanking him along the ground as he kicked and thrashed, his face a mask of pure terror. I tried to shout, to run after them, but I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, as if my body was betraying me, frozen in complete terror. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed, listening to Paul's screams fading into the distance. I finally forced myself to move, running blindly through the trees until I had no breath left. I fell against a tree, gasping, trying to get a grip on the sheer terror clawing through me. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, but of course there was no signal out here. I knew I couldn't just leave him, no matter how badly I wanted to run and never look back. Paul was out there, hurt and alone or worse. With no other choice, I made my way back to our destroyed camp. We hadn't brought a gun, stupidly thinking we wouldn't need one, but I had packed a flare gun in case of an emergency. I grabbed it along with my flashlight and anything else I thought might help. With my hands trembling, I started following the torn-up path the creature had left as it dragged Paul away. I kept moving, finding bits of broken branches and disturbed undergrowth. About halfway down the track, I stumbled upon one of Paul's shoes lying on the ground. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to keep going. Eventually, I came across a cave entrance, its opening smeared with big muddy footprints and drag marks leading inside. The thought of what could be waiting in there made me hesitate, but I knew Paul had to be in there. I gripped the flashlight tightly, aimed it into the darkness, and stepped inside. The stench hit me almost immediately, a foul, decaying smell that grew stronger the deeper I went. Every shadow, every small sound made my heart pound. But then, up ahead in the dim light, I finally saw him. Paul was alive, though dazed, looking rough and beaten up. His leg was clearly broken. I helped him up, and with my arm around his shoulder, he managed to hobble along as we made our way out of the cave. Just as we rounded some rocks a short distance away to catch our breath, we heard the beast storming back to the cave. It must have realized Paul was gone. It let out a terrifying scream that echoed through the forest. We froze, watching in horror as it charged out of the cave, running past us and deep into the woods. That was our chance. We didn't wait. We just took off, fighting through the pain and exhaustion. After what felt like hours of stumbling through the forest, we finally reached a farmhouse on the outskirts of the woods. We banged on the door, breathless and covered in mud, trying to explain what had happened. I don't think they believed us, but they let us in, helped Paul get comfortable, and called for the police and an ambulance. We thought we were safe, that it was finally over. But as we sat there, trying to catch our breath, we heard a deep, distant roar. The beast's scream getting louder and closer. It was heading straight for us.